Welcome back to Helping Heather. This is my life story part 2. And I left off at age 19. I had become an EMT, working on the ambulance, worked really hard with that. And I'm sure I missed a lot of things as we go, so I might fill in as I need to, depending upon what I share coming up. So, yeah. So I'm an EMT. I'm dating fellow, and he's a truck driver, somebody I went to high school with, and um, let me see. He's not a very good person to me. I wasn't super interested in him, but I was working on the ambulance. I was thrilled and happy with my life that way and doing all of that. And living with my parents, but as I was working as an EMT, I was living in the fire hall, and I would do, casual pick up casual, and I was there actually up in at the fire hall and working more than the full timers. I really enjoyed my career. I really enjoyed doing that. At the time, like I really did. It was something that I worked really hard to become, and I, built my muscle so I could lift people. I excelled at it. I was so thrilled. That was a good part of my life. I was very happy with all of that, and things threw me for a loop here and there, but for the most part, I was able to handle the emergencies and what I was witnessing and what I was participating in, what I was helping. I was pretty good that way. And then, well, I need to share, like, it is Holy Saturday, 2026. So this is April 4th, and it's heading up to Easter is tomorrow. And this week, I found out that my sister's dying of stage 4 colorectal cancer. And it's, I guess, in order for you to totally understand what I'm thinking and feeling at the moment for this is to share my story, really. And this next part that I need to share has a lot to do with her in some cases. And just to let you know now, like, we have been estranged for 16 years, maybe 17 years. She did some really horrible things, and I know a lot of people say that, like, it's one-sided and I was perfect. No, I don't think I was perfect, but the reason we're estranged is there's no reconciling and resolving a conflict. She's not acknowledging or understanding, and I don't think she has the capacity to do so. I think there's something wrong with her, or there has been, and now, of course, she's passing away of cancer. And it just struck me, like, this week. It was pretty intense and sad. So, anyway, I'm going to scroll back to I'm age 19. Like, my sister's life, I'm an EMT, okay? She's 3 years behind me, so 16, 17 years old. Like, I'm in October, she's in June. So 16, 17 years old, and that's grade 11 probably. And so she's home with mom and dad, and I've started my career, or started working on a career, or going to school. And I think I was 20, 21 before I was actually like an EMT. So we'll just kind of bump it up to there. So I was going to school with it. My mom was spending a lot of time helping me do the studies during school and putting me through situations. So she'd be like, "Here's a stitch, Heather," and she'd say, "This guy's fallen, in a car accident," or different things, and have me go through all the steps I had to do. And we did this so much. And that's how, I got to be an EMT, and then I got the job, and I was working out of town in a small town, working casual hours. So here we go. My sister's back home with my mom, finishing high school, doing all that kind of stuff. And when I was home, and I mean, I'd come back home. That's where I would land, but also, I guess I would also stay with my boyfriend as well, who lived downtown Edmonton. So that's kind of going on. But before when I was in high school too, alongside my sister, her and her friend went to Horlock Park in Edmonton, because we lived in St. Albert. And Horlock Park in Edmonton, and they went to like Heritage Days or Heritage Festival or whatever it's called. And they came back and they had met up and met a fellow um, uh, named, well, Brooklyn is what they called him. And he was much older than her, driving a white convertible, and like I was like, that's ridiculous. You guys can't be dealing with him. And we had our own phone line, and my parents had their separate phone line. And so he would call, and I would just question him, being the older sister, and ask him what he's doing with young girls and stuff. And I didn't connect the dots about how bad this was. I didn't really at the time. I just like I didn't like it, and my sister said she wasn't really interested in him in that way, and neither was her friend, but they just like hanging out with him. He was taking them out to do things. I told my parents about it, but they didn't really intervene or do anything. Um, and I started blocking him from getting hold of her on the phone by hanging up on him and stuff, and he was kind of trying to be threatening to me, and I was just like, I don't know who you think you are, and all that. I did not like this guy. There was other older guys that my sister and her friends started hanging out with too, that were associated with him through high school, and like she would hang out with other people and do other things too. Other than and it seemed to lead to hanging out with more mature guys and doing things, and like that was more fun, like getting them into clubs or doing things like that, as she was getting from 16, 17, and heading out that way. Heading up that way. Well, when she turned 18, she's like, as she was coming close to turning 18, she said that she was going taking a vacation to BC, and she wanted to go stay with a friend that had moved there in high school. And I don't remember the friend's name, but she was going to go stay with this friend for a couple weeks. But then I noticed that she's packing her actual phone and some things that you would take if you were going to be moving somewhere. And she said this Brooklyn guy was going to drive her down there. Well, I started to like, no, you can't, like, what do you mean? And talking to my mom and dad, and my grandpa even called to talk to her, which is out of character. He never really did anything. He didn't do anything or like talk to us really, unless we went over there for like a holiday dinner or birthday dinner. So him calling, he really thought he was going to change her mind, like he was somebody she should respect, but she didn't care. She just continued, and the day came, and Brooklyn picked her up, and off they went. And she let us know when she got there, and called us from the friend's house for the first couple weeks. And then in the middle of the night, one day, 2 weeks after she'd been there, I get a call from the Vancouver Vice Squad. And it's a vice detective identifying himself and telling me that he's picked up my sister on Richards and Nelson for prostitution. And he said that she was a new face and she looked young, so he wanted to ensure their routine is to see and ensure that this person's of age, because they don't have any ID with them when they're standing out there. And so they bring them in, and then they have them call family, and they try and identify them and see, how old they are and all of that. I woke my parents up, like, what? And trying to get them to talk to the detective and stuff, and so they did. And then they had Robin on the phone, and she's just crying, and I think my parents passed the phone to me to talk to my sister, because she's just crying. No, I'm just standing there in line for the club, me and my friends and things like that. And I was like, but you're 18. The age is 19. You didn't have ID. She goes, well, we have friends that are letting us in. It's okay. Like, I'm allowed to go in because I'm not going to drink. Whatever. She said some sort of stuff, and I was like, okay, well, I guess you were mistaken. Are you going to go back? Like, are you coming home soon? She goes, no, I'm still going to stay here. I want to hang with my friend. Then at some point, she's moved to like where she's living out of a hotel, but she wouldn't tell us which hotel. So she always had to call us, collect. And, from there, like, what do you do? Like, fast forward years later, and I have my own kids, and I realize if that would have happened to me, I would have been on the next plane. I've been in the airport, sitting there, going to Vancouver. Like, my parents did nothing. My dad even traveled to Vancouver regularly for business, and he didn't even make a plan to meet up with her. And I didn't realize that until I had my own daughter, you know, 20 years later. Or no, yeah, 10, call it 10 years later, because I was just intent on what do I do, right? And it's like, oh my goodness, like, yeah, so she was, anyway, so, so she kept denying that she was doing anything like that. And I then had the phone number of the vice detective, and I would call him and say, like, well, like, what do we do? Like, if you're saying she's doing this and she's saying she's not, what do we do? And he's like, well, call me on Friday night when at 9 o'clock, she'll be down there, I guarantee you. And so I did call him on the Friday night, and I said, is my sister? He says, yep. I said, she's going to say she's standing in line for the club. She most certainly is not standing in line for the club, he said. Yeah. So he said, no, she's actually out here prostituting. She's out here every single time, all the time. And so, coming back to the guy I was dating was a truck driver. And something to know about my sister: in high school and all the way up to this point, she was very snotty about who she would hang out with. My friends in high school were not cool enough, not pretty enough, none of us were. So she always would insult us, and she would block me from talking to my friends on our shared line, saying like they were not good enough, they're bringing my property value down. Like, she just was a snotty person, and she had snotty friends and stuff as well. Like, that's just how they were. So, all that to say, my boyfriend at the time was a truck driver. My sister would have known him. He did a route down to BC, down Vancouver every single week. So we came up with a plan, and he had a partner that was helping him, that was another truck driver, so the two of them could drive longer and get more hours. So they would kind of tag team, drive the same truck. One would be sleeping, the other one's driving. And this friend, not to be rude, but he was short, not very nice looking, and had like teeth like were kind of rotting out of his mouth. He would not have been somebody that my sister would have considered even talking to, and especially if she's standing in line for the club. And you got to remember that back then, and I'm dating myself, but back then we didn't have like snap a picture or do a video to catch a person doing this. Our cell phones didn't do that. So, like, honestly, like, so imagine now. So like now it would be easy just to video them like you're lying, right? But now, back then, there was none of that. And so anyway, so I'm like, okay, well, they said, do you want us to go down to Richards and Nelson and see what she's doing? And I'm like, yeah. And I said, then like maybe he could go up and proposition her, right, with the cell phone, so I can hear and hear him do that. And so that's what we did. We and it happened. My parents were in the kitchen with me, and we were doing the phone when it went down, and we heard her say how much it was for a date, and then Will got himself out of there, and yeah, carried on, and I'm like, well, like, don't confront her, like, because we'll never hear from her again, right? That'd just be bad. But so we didn't let on that was a sting we did. And then my parents, again, they just didn't do anything with that. I'm like, your daughter just, you know, just admitted, because she didn't know we were on the phone there. So, yeah. So that was the confirmation that she really was hooking. Now, later on, she would deny hooking and saying she was actually setting people up and taking their money. You know, it wouldn't have been a very good situation for her. I think she was trafficked, but I didn't know that word back then, and I only kind of came to that conclusion like last year, 2025, because first of all, I've relayed the story only a few times. I don't think about it very often. So many things have happened in my life. And I didn't realize how it's all connected. This is why telling your story, even just telling yourself or typing it out or talking it out, is helpful to you, because you can see how things are connected that you didn't before. And I think that this particular thing of me pushing that, you were hooking, me setting her up, me understanding and knowing and not believing what her lies were saying, because I wanted my sister to be helped. I wanted my sister, something like her, to be facing the reality and get out of that. But she wouldn't. and then just denied it and then carried on life and did other things. I think she got out of it and started doing something else. I think it was with drugs or something, growing a grow up or something at some point, and then she did something different. But she really couldn't hold a legit job. She couldn't hold a legit job. She worked for like Blue Cross for a little bit and she got fired. And it's just because she thought she knew everything. And even working as a healthcare aide at some point, or a PCA or whatever it's called, PNA, I don't know. People didn't like her. She didn't do well when she was in a situation with people having to work together and having other people kind of boss you around and tell you what to do. Like, it just didn't work out well. And she delayed working till she was 18 years old. Like she tried working at a restaurant. She got fired at her first job as a hostess. So something about how she behaved just wouldn't allow her to hold down a real job. And so then doing this, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know why she would have done that. If she would have had no choice. She did seem afraid of Brooklyn later on when she got out of that and moved to New West into an apartment. If I said, "Oh, is that Brooklyn?" She'd be like, "What? What?" She'd be freaking out. Yeah, I didn't realize how serious it was. She's like, "No, Heather, no joking." Like, yeah. So eventually, like, I brought my daughter out to see her in BC. She gained a lot of weight. I realized, like, that might have been trauma and whatever she did. Like, that really happened for her. And she was she never wanted to do anything to harm her body, so she wouldn't smoke. Me and my friends are smoking. She'd laugh about it. She didn't drink. She didn't smoke dope or anything, do any of that stuff. And then I saw that she was smoking dope when she was in BC. I was like, "What's going on? What are you doing?" So I don't know what happened there, but something changed for her that was okay. And yeah, she gained some weight, quite a bit, and was unhappy with herself about that. And then she went on a very strict diet. And after she lost a bunch of weight really, really fast, she also got her gallbladder. Her gallbladder went, and she had to have surgery for that. And I went out to be with her after that, to help look after her a bit. Yeah, and then she got a different boyfriend that she really was with for a long time and really enjoyed. He was a police officer, and I think made her feel safe. And she moved out of the apartment into a different little basement suite, and just kept going out to see her with with Emma, my daughter. And she would come out to see us too regularly, and we just kind of continued there, and nobody ever talked about, and nobody ever brought it up, right? And I think one day I just, like, I said, "Whatever happened?" Because we're spending a lot of time together. And she's like, "That never happened, that we were just taking people for money." And like, and I looked at her and I was like, "I don't believe that." And like, you darn well can tell me the truth. Like, I'm not gonna judge you, and maybe you need some help. And she just would not admit it. And I being in this family, like, what in the world? Like, people just forgot about it. People just, like, this is a thing that happened, you guys. Like, really? Could somebody have this happen to them and this happen and no one's going to talk about it? It was not okay for me. And I had such a hard time with that. And meanwhile, I'm working on the ambulance and I'm helping save people lives, and I'm working with police and working with fire departments and stuff. And this has all been going on with my sister, right? Like, uh, yeah. Looking back, I could have done things differently, but I was really like, do I go to BC? Like, I did later on when I had my daughter, and I kind of skipped over that piece. So, the guy I was dating, truck driver guy, yeah, he ended up not being a super good guy. He got me pregnant. Um, I mean, two to tango, sure. Yeah, I got pregnant. Found out on Mother's Day that year, which was pretty neat. My mom kind of had an intuition, so she actually asked me about it, and then I thought do a pregnancy test and found out, yes, I was going to be a mom. And so, I actually stayed working on the ambulance till I was about 4 or 5 months pregnant, and then I was just so sick. I stopped, and he actually proposed to me, and so we were engaged, but I didn't really want to get married at the same time. I was living with my parents, and at some point he moved in with us, and it was an odd situation. My parents didn't really like him, and I didn't, like I said before, it wasn't somebody I was super into, but then, hey, now so I kind of thought I better stick it out. And, yeah, I was quite big with my pregnancy. I think I had gestational diabetes and I didn't know about it. I had a lot of swelling and a lot of like retaining of water and stuff, and it got to be really big and it was very uncomfortable. And, my daughter's born on Christmas Day. And yeah, my sister had come out from BC for Christmas that year, and she'd come out to be there for the birth. And she was very helpful and very loving and very, into my daughter. But I noticed everything was that she said or did came back to her. Like, oh, isn't she cute in the outfit I gave her? Oh, I'm going to give her the best shoes. Oh, look, she's snuggling me. Oh, look, she's fallen asleep on me. Or, and as she got to be older, it was always like, oh, like my sister's nickname was Bob. Like that's what my daughter named her, Bob. And so she would say, "Oh, you're Bob's little mini me. Oh, look, aren't you cute in the vest Bob got you?" And my sister was giving her so many name brand things and expensive things all the time. I couldn't afford it. I was a single mom because at 3 months is when my daughter was 3 months is when her dad broke up with me, and then made no efforts to do anything as far as child support or being in the life of the child or anything, life of our daughter. And it just was regular. I just got a notification. Sorry. I suppose I could pause it, couldn't I? I'm just worried because uh, sometimes it goes a little bit weird if I try and pause it. Anyway, yeah. So that whole situation um, was a bit of a challenge, but uh, I enjoyed I enjoyed having my girl and having those baby days and baby time with my parents. Um, I had some altercations with my mom specifically, and then my boyfriend wasn't allowed to be back living at my house after that. They didn't like the way he was treating me, and I don't blame them. I mean, but I kind of felt stuck. Like, I would get up and go get him food and then go sit down, and like back at that time, this is before I had the baby, I had to put my feet up above the level of my heart and I'd sit there. So I sat on a recliner at the end of the couch, and I had 2 or 3 pillows to put under my feet with my feet up. So I got him his supper after he came back from work late, got him his supper, got myself with my feet up. Finally, he says, "Well, where's my pork or something?" I got out, like, I'm hugely pregnant. My baby was 9 pounds, 8 ounces, and I'm very swollen. And without thinking, and without even sassing him and saying, "Go get it yourself," at all, I got out of that position and went over and got him the thing he wanted. I started out with 0 credit card debt, and I had like $10,000 in savings from saving up my money before we started together. And then by the time we were done, I had $8,000 in credit card debt and no savings. And all because he had access to my credit cards and stuff. And then he broke up with me after he started talking to his best friend's wife on the road. And they were setting him up and trying to take his money, which he didn't have much. It was just a nightmare. I like very immature 20 something things happening. And my mom didn't like how he treated me. And so she also didn't like how I was like she thought I was being forgetful when I wasn't, maybe cleaning up dishes or doing things here or there. And I would say, oh, I forgot I was supposed to do that. And she said to me, when I'm pregnant and emotional, what are you going to forget to feed the baby and it's going to lay there down dead? And I was just heartbroken and upset by that. I started to cry, and then I decided, like, that was the line. Like, you can't talk to me like that. And I decided I was going to leave, and we went to a hotel. And I remember, like, realizing my mom's never apologized to me, not once at all. Like, I'd never heard her apologize to me ever. And I was like, that is not okay to say to me. Like, forgetting something isn't the end of the world. Whatever it is I forgot, it was probably like a benign thing to do with dishes or a chore I was supposed to do that I forgot. And, I'm not sure if I'm going to go back to being EMT. I'm about to have a baby for the very first time. I can't afford to live on my own. I'm living with my parents. My parents hate my boyfriend. My sister's been, like, I can look back and go, I deserved more mercy than I got, and that wasn't the greatest way to be treated. But back then, like, it took a lot for me to stand up for myself, and so we went to a hotel for the night, for a couple nights, and my mom called and said, I want to come see you and I want to apologize. And she apologized and she gave me a hug and she said, you're allowed to come back, but he's not. And so he said, that's fine. I'll go stay somewhere else. You got to be cared for. But I think he really liked that idea because he didn't want to be tied down. He wanted to have a baby, I'm sure, but he didn't want to be tied down with me. And it only took a couple more months before he broke up with me. But leading up to that, he barely checked in, didn't come, wasn't around my daughter, and he was already starting with other people without letting me know. Yeah. Horrible, horrible, horrible. So I would have been 22 about that time. And yeah, I just, yeah. I remember just crying when he broke up with me. And I realized, I felt like he was such a jerk. I should have done that first. I didn't protect myself and my assets, and now I have all this stuff. He'd had bad credit, so I had put a cell phone in my name. So he was calling on my dime, $1,500 cell phone bill every month, calling to talk to this best friend's wife over and over again, like roaming charges, going to truck driving down to the States and stuff. I just let him walk all over me. He never did pay me back a penny of that. He didn't pay child support at all. I had to take him to maintenance and get it started. And they set it up with no daycare fees, and I'm nursing, so it was only $300 a month. And I never got the order changed ever. Not ever. I just left it like that. And he didn't pay for years and years and years. He had a huge amount owing. And he just moved out of the province. No, like trying to figure out how to skirt the system. He moved to BC, so they really couldn't catch up with him, couldn't take his license or anything because he was in a different province. And he did all that. But before all that happened, after he breaks up with me, and I'm holding this child and I'm just bawling and crying. And I'm not crying because of losing him, because I didn't think that was that big of a deal. Yeah. So I had to pause that for a sec. Yeah. So I'm holding this child and I'm crying because I'm looking at her and I'm like, she's just lost out on having a dad. I was pretty sure he wasn't going to be there for her at all. He wasn't going to be, and I was just grieving for her and what she lost. And I hadn't really taken a moment to go, like, I didn't intentionally get pregnant and bring a life into this world where I was ready and set, and I regretted that piece, that I couldn't give her everything I would like, but I sure was going to do my best from that point on, and that's what I remember thinking. And I think my mom thought I was grieving him, but it was not the case, and I don't know if I got a chance to say it, but the grief that I felt and I cried out was way bigger than any man that I didn't love and wasn't my soulmate could ever make me cry, right? It was so different. And Yeah. So so there's that. And then I have to get a job. So she's 3 months old. Maternity leave goes till 6 months. So I'm on maternity leave till she's 6 months at that time. Now it's a lot longer, but it's only just 6 months there. So knowing that I probably can't go back to being an EMT, and the reason I couldn't is I was working out of town, casual. I didn't have a line. I didn't have like a full time job or anything like that. And even so, when you worked full time out of town, you were on call 24 hours a day for your whole shift. Well, what kind of babysitter could I get to pay on call with my wage, right? So that wasn't going to work ultimately. I wasn't going to leave my child back at home for my parents to look after while I did 3, 4 days on and come back. No, that was not even something I fathomed. So my only option was to try and get on with St. Albert or Edmonton ambulance. So I started working out again and started doing some things to be able to do that. But in the meantime, I also applied at Shoppers Drug Mart to be a supervisor and some other places too. I applied, you know, all over the place to be able to get a job. And I got a job on with I think I got a job on with Shoppers. Yeah, I got a job on with Shoppers. Okay. So, in those 3 months of time after he's broken up with me to now, I cannot believe what happened to me. Like, okay, so now it's like, okay, he's got a mom and a sister and different people who are going to want to see the baby and get to know the baby and things like that. And, um, yeah, I don't know what he's going to do with it. And like what kind of father he's going to be, what's going on there, kind of thing. That's kind of the next phase of what I got to deal with. And yeah, yeah. So I think I should probably leave that there, and then I will do starting life story part 3 on that next phase. I'm kind of thinking maybe I'll just push through actually, and we'll get to a different spot. So actually, okay, so I think giving me about a month or so to process and to, you know, be okay in my new normal and put out applications and do different things for that. And then one day he gives me a call. He hasn't seen the baby in the whole time. He's been gone. He hasn't been gone. He does like a tour where he's gone for a few days and he's back. But every week he should be back, right? Like it was not something he was gone for the whole month. And he hadn't quite let me know he's moving to BC yet. That's not something that happened yet. So he calls me up and says, I need to see the baby. I need to see my daughter. And I said, sure, when were you thinking? He says, well, like in 20 minutes or like 10 minutes, I'll be there in 10. And I was like, okay. And I realized like I was in charge, the baby's with me. So I could say no. And I chose to people please. I chose to say no, like, sure, come on over, right? And I gave him access to see his daughter within 10 minutes of calling. So he showed up and he came in and he sat down and he didn't even hold our daughter. He just looked at her. Didn't ask any questions. I gave him a little bit of information. That's it. And then he goes, okay, time to go. Maybe he was there for 10, 15 minutes. And as he turns to leave, after he gets his shoes on, he gives me papers and say, here. And I said, what's this? He says, it's to go to court to get access. I said, you just got access. What do you mean? He says, yeah. So, like, well, me and my girlfriend Naomi, like, so we could have her, like, well, where is she? Like, in BC. So I could have her for my days and stuff. Like, I'm like, what? I said, she's nursing. What do you mean? He says, yeah. Like, I mean, what? So there's a court date and everything. And then he leaves. I was so freaked out. I tell you, what you're talking about taking my newborn baby to BC? when I'm nursing and you've not even seen her in a month, and when you were here for her first 3 months of life, you barely did anything with her anyway. Like, what? And a court? Like, what? I was so scared. Like, when I tell you the amount of stress I felt for the next 3 months was so severe, I got shingles. So I was supposed to start work at Shoppers. I got the job at Shoppers Drug Mart as a supervisor. I was supposed to start work like the day after, it was the 6 month time, or like that next week, and I had to delay it for 2 weeks because I had shingles, and I had shingles because of how stressed out he made me with this. So I'm like, I want to go get a lawyer. My dad's like, you know, he's like, whoa, jerk's done nothing, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I got to get a lawyer. So I'm like, I'm giving her the best defense. I have no job. I have no money. Like, so, I mean, it's a little while away. So I'm so stressed out with this Shoppers, or with this, upcoming court date, and what's going to happen and what can happen to my baby, and that my milk dried up and I got shingles. And so my parents were going out of town just as I got shingles, and I couldn't take the heavy duty painkiller. Well, like I could have, like, done it timed with the nursing or given her formula and all of that instead, but I had to look after her, right? I'm on. So my mom's like, well, I'll just stay back. They were going on a holiday they had planned, right? And I said, no, no. And I had called and talked to his mom to say, here's what I need. Like, would you come stay with me so that my parents are going out of town? And she said, yes, she'll come stay with me. And I said, oh, that's so great. I was so excited that, she's going to get to spend time being a grandma. I'm going to get to be able to rest and be healing. My mom and dad were happy that that was going to happen for me, that like they were happy with that. They thought, okay, at least they're going to get support from the grandma and not So anyway, my parents go and leave, and then she shows up. And she says, let me just take the baby for a walk. You go have a rest. So she takes her in the stroller around the corner, around the block. And I'm just like, she doesn't have bottle or hat or anything like that. She goes, no, no, it's fine. I think she took her to go see her dad, who was around the corner. But I don't know for sure. I don't know what happened to her. Anyway, I went in to go lay down and have a rest, and she came back with her 20 minutes later and said, okay, well, I'm going to go now. I said, what? Aren't you staying with me for this weekend? You said you were going to. Like, so I could take pain. Like, I'm sick. She says, no, I can't go. I got to go. My mom would have stayed home. I could have found somebody else. I counted on her. I think I even had taken a pain pill so that I could actually start resting. And she left me. And so I just had to suffer through the shingles over the weekend. And nursing, I tell you, like, I stopped nursing that weekend because I just really couldn't handle the pain and all of that. I just couldn't, like, because it was on the spot where she was going to be nursing. It was just not good. I had to keep her away from touching that stuff, so I had barriers and stuff. Yeah, it was just a horrible, horrible situation. I couldn't believe she did that. And that would turn out to be how she was and why I ended it. It's fine. You do it to me. Okay, that was hard. That was bad. But when she did this bailing on Emma when she was old enough, that was it. That was the last time that I ever made any efforts towards her, and I never answered the phone from her again. Done. And I think it was one or two phone calls, and that's it. She called me at work, and I explained what the reason was. But I'll fast forward to that, and I'll tell you about that whole thing later. Like, I just don't get I don't get how that could be. Like, obviously she said what I wanted to hear so that she could get what she wanted, and I think she wanted to either have the baby with Wes. Like, well, why couldn't Wes just come and see the baby? The dad, I guess, using names, whatever. Anyway, horrible, horrible, horrible situation. I just couldn't believe it. So I delayed my start to working at Shoppers, and then I started working at Shoppers. And my mom, it was perfect because I would work evenings, so my mom would look after the baby after she came home from work, and she would just put her to bed, and have a little bath time, favorite time, and put her to bed. And I only worked part-time. I didn't work full-time. So I was making some money and putting it away and trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And I was working out and exercising and trying to apply for working on the ambulance in St. Albert and Edmonton and local areas so that I could, like, each time you worked a different place at that time, it would have been like different shifts, like 12-hour shifts. So then you come home, right? So like I just needed childcare for the 12-hour shifts. Could have made it work with daycare / my parents helping. Like they were totally willing to help, right? And yeah, but I never did get on to the ambulance in St. Albert or Edmonton. I really didn't. I worked hard, I got myself into shape and did all that, but I didn't get on ever with them. So that sucked. And I continued working at Shoppers Drug Mart though. And yeah. I almost want to pause for a second here and go back to when I became an EMT. My dad said when I first said I wanted to be an EMT, he said, "No, you can't do that. You're too small. You're not strong enough to do that." And I was like, "Yeah, watch me," right? So then I became an EMT. I worked hard and I got there and I did it. And he's bragging about his daughter being an EMT. He's telling everybody. And every time I'm wearing my uniform, he's like, "Come see this person." Like he just loved it, right? So he was proud of me, but he also didn't think I could do it. So at the time when I'm trying to figure out what I want to do after, I really became clear I can't get on and can't continue working on the ambulance. It's just not going to happen. I have to come up with a different career. And I'd sit down in the evenings and try and talk to my dad about what to do. And I wanted to be a teacher. He says, "Well, you can't live here that long. You can't live here that long to be a teacher. And you're not smart enough. You don't have the marks to have done to be a teacher," he said. I really think I should have challenged that and should have been okay with living, outside of my parents' house while becoming a teacher. But it just didn't, I didn't have the confidence. And so I didn't. So I think then I started looking at smaller degrees and going to, like office admin school. And also my mom said to me that they couldn't afford to pay for my EMT schooling. I think I did say that. And I'm like, how do you, my dad's buying $800 sweaters, like that are like name brand sweaters and $1,000 golf clubs. How do you not afford it? Like they've got Acuras and Lexuses and he's buying her jewelry all the time. So I don't know. It's just, it was just odd. And I think like they lived in the richest area of St. Albert where we lived, like at the time. So they were fine. And I just don't know where that came from, not being willing to pay for schooling. I mean, I put myself through the EMT schooling, and now as I'm facing going into something, I think one of the factors they didn't want to put money towards my next career that I needed to do. And my sister's still in BC. And so I chose office administration. I actually looked into being a respiratory tech because my daughter was getting asthma, and we were dealing with a lot of resp techs, and so I'm like, well, what would it take to be that? That looks like an interesting career, going and talking to people, learning about the lungs and being a specialist in that. So I actually contacted the hospital and asked about job shadowing some resp tech. So there was two different ones I job shadowed, one that was in the hospital and one that did home care. And when I realized it's really dealing with machines, I was like, yeah, not interested in that. I'm not going to do that. That's fine. But it's like a 2-year program. I'm like, okay. Well, my dad's like, you can do 2 years here and that's it. And I was like, okay, let's just do that. And no, I decided not to do that. So then I thought, why not be office administration? It was a 1-year program. The school was in St. Albert. And I was like, okay, why don't I try doing that one? And I applied to get in. And I got accepted. And then I applied for a grant because I was like, I don't have the money for this. So let's do a grant. So I did a grant and I got accepted for the grant. And the grant paid for my tuition, my books, and it gave me a little bit of money to live off of each month. And because I lived with my parents, I couldn't claim rent, I couldn't claim utilities or anything. So it literally gave me a little bit. And I had a car payment at the time. So I think it basically cared for the car payment and the minimum amount of my credit cards that I had to pay. That's about it. And it was, and the thing about grants is if you work, you're also going to have to take some of that money off, right? and off the grant if you work. So you might as well not work during that time. So I focused on my school. I got honors. I did a great job, just like I did in EMT, and like I did bookkeeping and accounting, and I couldn't believe because I didn't do good at math. But math is not like, it was just simple math. It was more about rules. Like accounting is more about rules and remembering rules. And I guess I realized I have a knack for that, and that was pretty good. Helping my class, helping other people study. Now, I'm a single mom, and I have all these people who've caught on to the fact that I'm smart at this, calling me all the time, wanting to get together to study, or wanting me to go over things on the phone with them, or wanting, and I thought, oh, this is great. I've got all these friends. Like, because, like you get out of high school and you kind of lose friends. Some of the things I went through, my friends weren't really around anymore. They were doing other things, hanging out with a different group that they wouldn't really call or invite me or include me. And so I was like, okay, well, these are people kind of going into college, the same thing as me. Let's see if we can be friends. And they also live in my city, obviously, because if they're going to school in St. Albert. And so I thought, oh, this is great. So I gave up like time with my daughter to help other people. I'm already done my assignments. I've already studied. I'm helping other people all the time with their bookkeeping and their work and getting it all done. And then I find out they're all going out to the restaurants after and the bar and different things, and no one's including me on that. That was like, oh, really? And I was like, I can't waste my time on these people. Like, I did my best. I did help them. And I thought, okay, I'm investing in getting friendships for later, but no, nobody really connected with me afterwards. And I don't know what that reason was. I think some of them knew each other before, but yeah, it didn't really happen. But then, okay, so I passed school and then I got a job at Finning. And I got a job, like one of the girls from my school was a receptionist at Finning, and she put in a good word for me, and I applied for an accounts payable clerk, and I got the job. And so we're working at Finning together, and that was amazing. So that was good. So, but she, wasn't really interested in being close with me, and that's fine. Like, whatever. I don't know why. I don't know if I rubbed her the wrong way or whatever, but she was definitely one that reached out to get my accounting help and bookkeeping help. So anyway, I do an accounts payable clerk, and I continue to work hard at that. And it gets to the place where, we have stacks of invoices to enter, like stacks of them, like A to Z, each one having a tray with stacks like this, tons. So I was really fast. I got fast at doing it. I was doing a good job, and I did a lot, right? And then we changed management or something in our department, in our area, and some things started to change, and some people quit, other AP clerks, and went down to being and my friend who was a scanning person wanted to do not just scanning, because it's hard on the body to scan all the invoices, because you scan them all in, and one idea would have been like, everybody gets a certain amount of letters of the alphabet of vendors, and you stamp scan and enter those invoices. So you're like getting a break from different motions, but no one would go for that. They really didn't want to improve the process. And it was for 92 branches. So, I mean, this is like a lot of work. And I think there were 6 of us. So my friend, the scanner, decided to quit. And then we really couldn't replace her, because people would come in and they would do it for a while, but they weren't as fast as her, because she had done it for years and years and years. And then we ended up having massive turnover in the department, where there was only myself and another girl, Sherry, an older lady, left. Everybody else left, and it was year end. So I think it was on purpose. It was year end, and year end was calendar year end on New Year's Eve, and I was there till like midnight. It was a long day. I was there to scanning with my friend Sherry, or my coworker Sherry. Okay, so we're scanning now. We're getting all new team members and clerks, but they're opening up a role. Yeah, we're getting all new team members actually, and a person from my class that I helped tutor contacts me and says, I'm wanting to apply for this AP clerk. Will you put a good word for me? So then I say to my manager, yeah, this is the person I work with at school, or I had at school. I know her, and so she got on with us as an AP clerk. And then we just rehired the department. There was another person so we rehired the whole department. Now, my daughter is sick a lot. She's got asthma and reflux at this time. So I do have to take sick time for her, for myself. It's just a hard time, right? So during the time. So I am taking that during that, but I'm still doing a good job. I'm still doing a lot of work. and getting it done. And like I said, there's down to me and another person. Well, the management decides that they're going to make a vendor, they're going to make two roles that are a little higher than AP clerk in our department. There's going to be a vendor contact and a branch contact. And so they put these two roles out there, and they put it out, and they decide that the person who I vouched for to come in is going to be one of them. And also another new person's going to come in and be like another one of the other new people is getting the other job. And we had a team meeting about it, and someone's like, how come Heather's not getting the job? And they're like, well, she's not qualified. I said, I have the same qualifications. We went to the same school, and in fact, I helped her and tutored her for accounting. And then that person, like, she just, like, my manager just got like, what? Like, just nervous. And so that's when, and this is 2 years in, and I mean, I'm taking hour-long bus rides to get there. I'm getting up early, getting home late. My daughter's in the beginning at daycare from the start to the finish. And I've sacrificed a lot, like, for this accounts payable clerk job. And it's bad. It's not good. So then I looked at the other jobs in Finning, and there's an admin assist job for the Six Sigma team. And I had been interested in the Six Sigma team because it's like process and efficiency improvement. I'm like, oh, I really like that. Like, could totally redo this accounts payable department in a better way where it's easier and better on people, like listening to people's concerns and complaints and readjusting it. But whatever. So I was mindful of that, and I thought, okay, I would like that. Like, it's an admin assist job. So I applied for it, and I got an interview, and I was like so excited. I went there and I did my interview. I came back, and a few days later, my manager comes to me, and I want you to know, I also never got a raise the whole time for 2 years. I was making $26,000 a year, and I never got a raise the entire time. People just used me and let me continue doing this AP clerk. No one ever asked, never thought I was going, like, it's just a nightmare. I asked to start just a little bit, or to leave just a little bit later, or change my hours just a little bit so that I could get home within half an hour instead of taking an hour waiting. So I was giving free time at the end of the day while I'm waiting for my bus. And they just wouldn't work with me at all in this department. It was so bad and so upsetting. And I just took it. I took it. And I'm so mad at myself now. Like, but I just took it. And no one in my life said, you know what, that's not good. Like, blah, blah, blah. But I applied for the job. My dad's telling me, no, you have a good thing. Don't apply for anything new. But I did. And I got the interview. And then my boss shows up a few days later into my cubicle. And she said, I have some news. I want to give you like a raise. And I was like, what? And so she gives me a paper, an envelope, and I open it up, and they're bumping me up to $40,000 a year, blah, blah, blah. And, no retro pay at all, but bumping me up now and like going to put me change my title and stuff like that. I was like, okay, thank you. She goes, I just want you to keep this in mind when you get your phone call in a few minutes. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? So I got a phone call from the interviewer, and Peter Lemaire, so awesome. He was like, oh, Heather, we want to offer you the job. We thought you were great. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I said, well, how much does it pay? And I knew it was like 3 steps higher than what I was making. And so he told me, and it was like $60,000 a year. Oh, hold on. Yeah. So, like, are you seeing a theme? Helping Heather, chronic self-abandoner. I was kind of taught not to stand up for myself or even recognize when I'm being walked all over and taken advantage of. So $60,000 a year. And I was like, I accept. So for like my last 2 weeks of AP, I got my $40,000 a year, 40 something. And then I started with my $60,000 at, or maybe it was 50 something, I think. So a huge bump. No comparison, and I started that job, and that was a good thing. And at some point, I was able to, get a car. So I didn't have to worry about, because of that amount of money, that pay bump, I was able to get a car after a little while, and then I didn't have to worry about, the long hours. Life got to be a lot easier. Anyway, that's kind of where I'll leave it. I guess I'm feeling led to kind of share about all the ways I allowed myself to be walked all over, and in hopes other people will recognize it sooner than I did. And my dad was diagnosed as a narcissist with narcissistic personality disorder, and I'm sure I was groomed to just take. I was not invested in, taught, how to navigate relationships in the world, how to avoid being manipulated. I wasn't taught any of those things, and I don't know if in families people are teaching their kids about that, or if they just learn because they're not treated poorly, right? Like I was used by my parents to look after my younger sister from the time I was 5 on, or even earlier probably, but that's when I can remember is the time I was 5 on. And a 5-year-old isn't capable of looking after a 2-year-old, but I mean, even outside, right? Yeah, Gen X, we're so whatever. Anyway, so I think I was just from the beginning, like very used to being used and people pleasing other people and not speaking up and standing up for myself, right? Even though I was trained to be an EMT and help people again, I really didn't, cultivate the skills to understand that people are, or how to navigate these things and see them for what they were, being used. And I still have a hard time right now thinking about how you navigate where people are using you. In fact, right now in my life, I'm seeing people who are supposed to be friends, but it's almost one way where I'm giving to them more so. And I think, do you just accept that and carry on, or do you, put a stop to that, or like one way friendship isn't a friendship, right? I don't know. I guess I could try leaning on somebody, and if they let me down, then okay, maybe there's a limit to what I can offer there too, because using is something, being used is something. But again, if you're strong enough to give that out of the goodness of your heart and out of your excess, maybe I guess it's circumstantial then. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I know that's an hour for part 2, but a lot of stuff to go through, and we're kind of at the place where I'm working at finning, and I might backtrack and talk about my daughter's health and all of that in the next one. But we're going to leave off at finning, where I'm starting my new job. Okay. So what would I have been? 25? Call it 25, 26 years old at that point. Okay.